Hey there, it's time for another video tutorial with Dr. Ramey. Today we're going to be talking about gram stains. Okay. All staining that you'll do in this course will begin with the preparation of a smear, except for negative staining. So that'll be in another tutorial. So the first thing we need to do for gram staining is, as always, collect all of the equipment, all the materials, and the organisms that we need, and make sure we have everything. Once we do that, then of course I'm got the proper attire on, my lab coat, my safety glasses. I'm going to be working with live organisms. So I'm going to put my gloves on. Now I used these gloves once, but they weren't ripped and they weren't otherwise dirty or contaminated. So I'm going to, rather than be wasteful, I'm gonna reuse them. All right. So the problem is that when you take them off, they're inside out. So I want to show you a little trick to flip them back around without having to touch the inside of the gloves, which should be the outside of the gloves. Do that little trick, treat it like a blow into it to make it like a little balloon, give it a little twirl, and then you got some air in there, and you can kind of squeeze it. This will pop the fingers out, and it will also let you know if there's any rips or tears in the glove, because then it won't hold air, in which case you would need to get another glove, right? So any rips or tears equals throw away the glove. I'll do the same little trick to this glove. Pop it out, and now it's right side out. Never put gloves on that you've used already inside out. You have to flip them right side out or get a new pair. Okay, now I'm ready to turn on my Bunsen burner and set up my Sterile Field. Going to look in my community drawer here, and of course I've got matches. So let's get our Bunsen burner going, as always. Okay. I know that I'm going to need my inoculating loop here pretty shortly, so I'm going to go ahead and take it out. Got my microscope slides. I've got my organism or organisms that I'm going to work with, and I've got my gram stain kit. Okay, the gram stain kit, you've got the primary stain, which is a crystal violet. Okay, it'll give a similar nice blue or violet color like methylene blue does. I've got my grams iodine, which is a mordant, which is an important component of gram staining. I've got my safranin, and I've got a squirt bottle of ethanol over here. I've got my squirt bottle of distilled water, which I will need as well. Okay, so I think I'm ready to begin with the staining process. I've got, here's my box of slides. I'm going to take out a nice new slide. New slides are clean, but if I needed to, I could also go to the sink and wash my slide if it wasn't clean. It's important, especially with gram staining, it's important to have a very clean slide. And remember, once your slides are clean, you shouldn't handle them. You shouldn't be handling the slide on its surface. You should be handling the slide from the edges, the side, like this. Okay? That way it stays nice and clean. I'm going to mark one end with my grease pencil as the end that I can use as my grabbing end. Now I can hold that end once I've got it marked, and that'll be the end that I'll use my clothespin slide holder to grab with. If I'm working with multiple organisms on the same slide, then I can also mark out grids for those, but I'm only going to gram stain one organism today, so I'm just going to kind of mark a circle on the slide about the size of a dime or maybe a nickel, right? And that'll just help me locate my organism when I'm looking at it with a microscope. Alright, so I'm going to start with my simple smear. I'm going to work with, actually, I'm going to gram stain Staphylococcus epidermidis, S. epidermidis, which is in a slant. Okay. So before I begin, or before I put any of the cells on the slide, because I'm transferring from a solid medium, I'm going to take my dropper bottle of water, and I'm going to put one drop on the slide. I'm going to take got my S. epidermidis cells here. First thing I'm going to do, of course, is to sterilize my inoculating loop, as always, the entire wire. I'm going to give it a few seconds to cool. While that's cooling, I'm going to go ahead and screw off the cap of the slant tube. 2 passes through the flame, and now I'm going to go in and pull some cells out onto my inoculating loop. 2 passes, recap, and I'm done with that. Now I've got cells on my inoculating loop. Going to twirl those around in the water, spreading them out a bit as I do so into my circle that I made. Okay. And now I'm going to, of course, sterilize my inoculating loop. Set it aside because I'm done with it for now. And now I'm ready to air dry. So I want to get my clothespin slide holder out of my community drawer. Going to carefully grab my slide with that. And I'm going to air dry. Again, you don't want to hold it too close to the flame because you don't want there to be too much heat. If you heat up your slide too much during this process, you will damage your cells on the slide, and that will have a negative effect on the outcome of your gram stain. Okay, so you need to be patient and make sure that you do not lower the slide in too close to the flame, and make sure that your specimen, your slide, is completely 100% dry. Okay, it's got to be 100% dry before you move on to the next step. And this is where a lot of beginning gram stainers, or smear preppers, I might say, make a mistake where they heat up the slide too much in the air dry step, damaging the cells. Okay, so there are several steps where mistakes can get made, or a lack of experience can cause a poor result. poor gram stain result. I'll talk about some other ways some other things, common mistakes that can lead to poor results as I go along. But this is the first and one of the most crucial steps to get a good schmear. The right amount of cells, not too much, not too few, which is, a lot of it is trial and error. And again, it's always better to have too many cells than no cells at all, is kind of my motto there. Okay, I'm going to double check. That looks pretty good. Okay. If anything, I would say I've probably got too many cells, but again, I usually, especially in demonstrations, I tend to err on the side of too many cells than too few, so that way you can see the schmear on the slide a little better. Alright, so that's not heat fixing though, that's just air drying. Now I'm ready for the heat fixing step. Now that I'm excuse me, now that I'm completely air dry, I'm ready for the heat fixing step, which is 3 passes through the flame lengthways. So it'll be 1, 2, 3. Very simple. Okay, 3 passes through the flame lengthwise. And now my schmear is completely done. I've got a heat fixed schmear on the slide. The cells have been destroyed from the heat fixing process. They're desiccated, they're dried out, and they're heat fixed. They're non-viable. They're no longer, if they were a pathogen or a potential pathogen, they're no longer pose a threat to me or anyone else. So I can now I can turn my flame off because I won't need it anymore. Get it out of my way. And I can take my gloves off because, oh, actually I don't want to take my gloves off yet. You know why? Because I'm going to stain. So never take your gloves off. Always have your gloves on when you're working with live organisms and when you're working with stains. So I want to leave my gloves on at this point until I'm done with the staining process. Okay, so the first step of the staining process for gram staining, when you're using stains, you're always going to work. I'm going to move this over just a tad. You're always going to work in the sink here, on your slide holder, your slide tray. Okay, like so. And the first stain is going to be crystal violet, 30 to 60 seconds with crystal violet. Alright, I'm going to need to rinse, so I'm going to make sure that I have my squirt bottle of distilled water close by, and I'm going to very thoroughly cover everything with crystal violet, and I'm going to keep an eye on the clock for at least 30 seconds. So again, 30 to 60 seconds. While I'm doing that, it's always a good idea to make sure that you have the protocol handy, okay? For reference, even if you are not a beginner. Okay, so that's been about 30 seconds. By the time I rinse it off, it'll be more like 45 seconds, which is fine. And I'm going to rinse thoroughly with distilled water. Tilt the slide, rinse all that stain off. Okay, make sure it's nice and thoroughly rinsed. Get as much of the water off as possible. And now I'm ready to add iodine. Now iodine's only for about 10 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds on the iodine. So again, I'm going to thoroughly cover everything with iodine, my smear. And I'm going to do a 10-second count in my head. 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, and rinse. Okay. Now, after I've rinsed my iodine off, I am ready to decolorize. Okay. So we'll discuss in lecture and lab what the decolorizing step does, but here I just want to demonstrate the procedure in the tutorial. We'll go over the particulars and the details of what's going on in lab and lecture. So my decolorizer is ethanol. All right. So I can see, if I look at my slide, you can see that there is kind of some purple or bluish color, and I want to add my ethanol to the slide as it says in the lab manual. So you're going to decolorize with ethanol, and if you the ethanol is 95% ethyl alcohol or 95% ethanol. Okay, so it usually takes about 10 to 20 seconds. It's always good to reference your protocol. It takes about 10 to 20 seconds usually. All right, and then you don't want to use the decolorizer any more than necessary, and you'll see that it decolorizes very quickly. Okay, so all of that purple color should pretty much run off almost immediately. So, and then you want to wash right away, rinse right away rather, with some water. Okay, so once you don't see any more purple running off in your 95% ethanol, which is pretty quick, 10 to 20 seconds max, rinse immediately with some deionized water. And now we're ready for the counter stain. Okay, so the primary stain for gram staining is crystal violet. Okay, the mordant is grams iodine. The decolorizer is 95% ethanol, and the counter stain, which is a pink stain, is safranin. So I'm going to cover my smear completely in safranin. Okay, be liberal with these stains, and again I'm going to wait 30 to 60 seconds. About the same amount of time as the primary stain. So I can either count in my head, or I can keep an eye on the clock, or even use a timer during this step. So while I'm keeping an eye on the clock, I would like to mention this is during the decolorizing step using alcohol, 95% ethanol, is where a lot of mistakes can get made. A lot of students make mistakes. So it's very easy to either over decolorize or under decolorize. So it's important to get that step right in order for the gram stain process to work and get a good result. Okay, we'll talk more about how over or under decolorizing can cause your results not to look good later. Okay, so that's been about 45 seconds. I'm going to rinse that off. Again, 30 to 60 seconds, anywhere in that time frame is good. Rinse it off really well. That safranin, which is the counter stain for the process. All right, so once I'm done with the counter stain and I've rinsed well, now I'm ready to dry my slide. I'm going to turn the camera back towards me a little bit here. There we go. Now I'm ready to dry my slide. Okay, slide has to be completely dry. I've got way too many cells on this slide, and you can really see, you can really see the cells, or the smear rather, on the slide even after all of that. And for the purposes of demonstration, that's okay because you can see the stain. All right. Now, a perfect gram stain, you may barely be able to see a faint haze where the cells are, or maybe not even be able to see anything at all. So if you can't see something, don't panic and don't assume that it didn't work. You must look at it in the microscope first before you can make a determination whether the stain is a good one or not. So now that that is all done, I am ready to get my microscope and to take a look at my stain. So let's do that. Come over to the microscope cabinet, grab my microscope, making sure, of course, to get my microscope. Make sure that my gloves are off. Truth be told, I should have taken my gloves off before getting my microscope out of the cabinet. But this is a learning video. Sometimes I make mistakes on purpose. Sometimes I just make mistakes. Okay, so I'm going to make sure now that the staining is done. I'm done staining. Gloves come off, right? So the only time you have gloves on, again, is when you are working with live organisms or you are working with stains, right? You never wear gloves when you are using your microscope. Okay, never wear gloves when you're using your microscope. Okay, let's set this microscope up. I'm going to bring this in a little bit closer now that I'm done staining. All right. Microscope looks pretty good. I'm going to put my cells up here and position them in a good spot. It's important when you're gram staining to start with your iris diaphragm lever all the way to the left, okay? Because if you start out with it too far to the right, sometimes that can make a gram negative organism look more gram positive. So it's better at least to start with it all the way to the left. And on the lowest power objective, of course. I'm going to remove my safety glasses now and make an adjustment on the light and the ocular. I'm going to find my cells. Oh yeah, that's one busy smear there. I'm going to intentionally go over to the edge where there are fewer cells. So usually if the middle of your smear has too many cells, you go out to an outer edge where there are fewer cells, hopefully, and you'll get a better result, better visual result. Sometimes clumps of cells will not stain properly if they're too clumpy. So gram negative cells, you might get a false positive. They might look like gram positive cells because they didn't decolorize properly because they were all clumped up. Okay, so I'm going to continue moving up my my objective lenses, and then again make light adjustments if necessary. Try to find some cells that are by themselves, not too clumpy, right? Found a pretty good area in here where there are some nice single cells, so that's good. And now I'm ready for oil because I'm about to use my 1000X my 100x oil immersion lens. Okay. And when I swing up, of course it's out of focus, and I'm going to be very careful about bringing it into focus. You don't want to go up or down too far when you're doing this, because then you'll lose your cells. It's really hard to find them again if you move too far away from your plane of focus at 1000x magnification. And I have actually a fantastic result here. I don't know how that happened, but I've got this organism is Staphylococcus epidermidis, so I expect the arrangement to be a Staphylococcus arrangement, which is grape clusters, or grape-like clusters. In this case, it's a gram-positive organism, so it looks a nice purple color, right, like a violet or purple color. If it was gram-negative, it would be pink. Okay, gram-negative organisms are pink, gram-positive organisms are purple. All right, so I'm going to move to an area where there's a lot of clusters, grape-like clusters. That's the staph arrangement, and some single cells as well. Right, and I'm going to attempt to let you see what that looks like, and I'll probably put up a picture of an example of a gram-positive and gram-negative organism as well. Actually, rather than show you what's in my microscope, I'll take a picture of it and I'll pop the picture up. That's probably what I should have been doing in all of these tutorials. And I'll pop the picture up and you can see what it looks like. And then I'll also, I only used one organism, which is gram-positive. I didn't have a gram-negative organism to work with during the time of this making this tutorial, so I will show you a picture. Okay, that's it. I'm going to make my observations. I'm going to make my determination as to the whether the organism is gram-positive or gram-negative, which is extremely important. And then I'm ready to either move on to my next organism or to clean up. I'm not going to put that part in the tutorial. Okay, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you all in class and lab.